Welcome to Scorched Earth and a general reading for the sign of Cancer, Sun, Moon or Ascendant for the month of November 2025. I hope you're well. I haven't been, and that's why these readings are late, so apologies about that. I'm using the Tower of the Divine for you today. Now, before we begin, if the reading resonates, there is an extended that you'll be able to access at the end. That is via the first link in the description box below. Alternatively, you can come and join my private community, which is the Order of the Phoenix over on the Circle platform. There you can get access to all of the extended content for no extra cost, and that includes weekly energy readings, as well as all of the extendeds for the signs for the month. You can also, if you join at the higher tier, come participate in the live classes that we run over there. And we've just started doing tarot meetups where we're practicing reading for each other and stuff as well. So if any of that sounds like it might be of interest to you, you know what to do with that link. Those links. There are two. Anyway, let's flip this around and have a look. I've given these a good shuffle. Let's just ask for 3 cards for Cancer, please. There's the first one. We have Temperance in your recent past. What about current energy, please, for Cancer? Okay, we have the Star. Nice. And what about what's coming towards Cancer for the rest of... interesting. For the rest of November, we have the Empress and we have the Hanged Man. I am fairly certain that you are the only sign to have got major arcana across the board this month. I'm pretty certain, actually. We have the Knight of Wands at the bottom of the deck. Now, what's really important to know about this month for you, Cancer, is that, and this is true for all of the signs, but it seems to have a particular specificity for you this month. Everything that happens this month is important, right? There's no way of getting around it at all. Why? I'm not sure. Perhaps this will come out as we go through the reading. But as we get used to, the time around eclipses or whenever there's any kind of transit to, Pluto or the nodes or something like that, of there being, or even Saturn, actually, right? The idea of there being some sort of, karmic thing going on, or fate or destiny, all of these sorts of things, right? That's fairly standard. But what's been very clear to me over the course of this year is that that energy hasn't switched off at any point. It has been non-stop. I think we have been, to some extent, maybe slightly burned out by it. But the energy is redoubling. Now, why it would be so strong with you, I'm not entirely sure. Perhaps it is because Jupiter is in your sign at the moment. Who knows? Is Jupiter getting ready to go retrograde? I believe so. I can't tell you if it's happening this month or not. I think it is. But there are so many things that are important about this moment for you that I would make sure that you're paying attention, I think, right? You will notice there's not much in the way of responses here, responses being the minor arcana, right, to this big universal energy that's playing out at you. Other than the Knight of Wands, the energy of being present and noticing and taking advantage of opportunities when they are presented to you, or in fact even, seizing those opportunities when you create them, whichever way round it is for you, either or. Perhaps we will see the responses in the clarifiers, but let's have a look. Tell me about the Temperance card. Why is this here for Cancer? First card out, 3 of Wands. Why is Temperance here? Okay, we have the 5 of Cups and we have the Ace of Swords. Tell me about the Star. We've got the Queen of Cups, that's you, Cancer, and the Knight of Wands showing up again. Sagittarian energy, that one. And what about the Empress and the Hanged Man? We have 6 of Pentacles, the Hermit, plus, thank you, and the Emperor at the bottom of the deck. Aries energy right there. Page of Wands is at the bottom of the deck, and I think this really underscores or what my feeling has been for Cancer in the last few months. I mean, there's an enormous amount of energy that you put into the shifts that you've been trying to bring about for yourself, right? I know a few Cancers, and I know they're pulling off extraordinary feats at the moment, a lot of them at least anyway. But it's always been very clear to me that this is simply the foundational preparation for where you go next. It's not like this is it and this was it and this is what you've been working towards and now it's done. Like there's something much more expansive in store for you, and you just had to be in the right place with the right foundation for this to happen. Well, we are now very much within the remit of that, in my opinion. So understand that it is the start of something. It's not the culmination of everything that you've worked for. Far from it. So I'm going to get my little selenite stick here so I can fiddle with that. Again, it's very clear to me that being present is the best thing that you can do for yourself this month. To the extent that, to some extent, rather, that's probably a better way of putting it, I'm not sure how much you need to actively do this month. Quite often when big universal energies are at play on us, there is some sort of big change that we need to make. There is some sort of, realignment that needs to happen. And that's, sometimes that's happening in the emotions, sometimes that's happening in the mind. Sometimes it's down to what you do. And then there are other times where it pays to just let it play out. And I think the let it play out is the message here for you. When we've got the Temperance card over here, a card that does talk about healing, it talks about balance, talks about equilibrium. It also talks to a certain amount of, divine oversight, divine orchestration, divine timing, these sorts of ideas. But I feel that for most of you, the Temperance card is about achieving the balance between the joy of having gone after what you want and the sadness of what you've had to leave behind to do it. You notice that we've got the Ace of Swords there. That's the opportunity for a new way to think about things. And I think, just as there is no card that is all good or all bad in the tarot, there is no action or event that is all good or all bad without there being something something that changes on the other side of the limb, if you were, right? The other polarity is affected too. So it may be that you've been offered your dream job, but in order to pursue that, you've had to leave behind a place where you have been comfortable, and maybe you've left behind people that are very important to you, but you didn't really feel like you could stay where you are, right? That's one example. A different example could be, what would it be? I don't know. I can't bring one to mind at the moment, but hopefully you kind of get the point that I'm trying to make here. Just as you have to break some eggs to make an omelette, right? Nothing comes without a cost. And it doesn't matter how good the thing is, there is always a cost somewhere. Sometimes that's a cost we're more than willing to pay, and sometimes that cost smarts a little bit more than we would like it to. But it is what it is. And I think where you have been with the Temperance card is about trying to find the place to balance what you feel about it, because I think you have been feeling pretty deeply. The Ace of Swords, though, is an objectivity, which I like to see about you, Cancer. Well, it's the truth quite often, right? The binary state of there being a sort of absolute truth and us seeing an absolute truth. But it can also speak to, new creative ways of thinking about things. It can talk about how you view reality full stop. Because everything to do with the swords is about the mind and communication and things like that, and so on. And so it follows then that where there's new experiences being had, there are new opportunities to process information that can lead you to change the parameters of of your reality, right? Just simply by the absorption of this knowledge, the acceptance of this knowledge. And I think you have been working out how to tread the objective road with this, even though it's kind of struck you pretty deeply. And being you, Cancer, right, you do feel things deeply anyway. But I think that speaks to the level of growth that's been going on here for you, because like normally you would only really, I mean, it depends on the rest of your chart really, but the emotions of the situation would overwhelm everything else. And you've kind of found this way to almost separate the experience, accept the loss, accept the feelings, but also know that you are still on the right track and going in the right direction, you know? So when we come into your current energy, we have the Star. And interestingly enough, this too also has a meaning ascribed to it that involves healing, just as Temperance shows healing that comes after rebalancing oneself. The Star is healing that comes through, I think, a return to hope. You know, you've spent a bit of time working on something that's been emotionally uncomfortable for you, but it seems to me that as things stand now, you are much more able to orient yourself towards the new, whatever the new may be, right? And it's no longer tempered quite so much, or tainted quite so much with the feelings of loss that you have had up until this point. Now, you will notice that the Queen of Cups and the Knight of Wands are both on their side here, and I think that this is a very interesting point, because this Queen of Cups represents you. This is Cancerian energy right here, and we have that Knight of Wands showing up here again. Notice it's the same card that we've got over here. Now, I think the reason why they are both here is because you are not fully yet at a point where you have assuaged this feeling within you that perhaps you have been, that perhaps you did not fully think through the consequences of whatever changes you have made recently. You know, the Knight of Wands is many things, but often he is associated with reckless behaviour or thoughtless behaviour, or rather knee-jerk behaviour, right? Where where like a little bit like a rubber band, you know, pulled to full extension and then let go. I feel like that's the energy of the Knight of Wands there. It's not particularly concerned with consequence, or he is not particularly concerned with consequence. He's so in the now that the idea of consequence isn't something that really naturally comes up, right? Now, the fact that they're both on the side is important because these energies are present, but they're not really pushing in any particular direction. We've been trying to level ourselves out. This is what you've done over here. We've got hope starting to return, and you being a little bit more gentle with yourself, I think, than you have been recently, which was needed. But there's some question of who you find yourself to be right now, Cancer, because I think there is a bit of you that doesn't quite recognise who you are, what you're doing, why you're doing it, and how you even came to be here in the first place. You know, the Queen of Cups for you is that familiarity of the things with which you are intimate. I think intimacy is an incredibly important thing for Cancer, and particularly around your home environment, right? Cancer is the ruler of the fourth house, and that sense of being nurtured by what is familiar and comforting and all that kind of thing is an important part, I think, of the way that Cancer processes the world. And to some extent, you feel to me like you are ever so slightly out of your element right now. You know, not yet at a point where you feel comfortable, not yet at a point where you feel settled and nurtured by the situation, but also perhaps not kicking the shit out of yourself quite as much as you might have been doing recently. Like I said, there are still these little niggles that feel like maybe you may have behaved impetuously with making the decisions that you have and instituting the changes that you've made thus far, but they are reducing day by day, and I think this is important because there is always a settling time, you know, a settling down period, And I think that's what you're trying to focus on. The funny thing is, though, I do not feel that necessarily that's where you're supposed to stay, because, going back to what I was talking about right at the beginning, it feels like this is the first step on the next adventure, and all the effort that it's taken to get you to where you are now, albeit there's a little bit of, feelings about it one way or the other, is actually just preparing the road for what comes next. Now, I want to pull out my Wild Unknown deck here a moment, because you feel pretty busy, Cancer. I don't really feel like you're sitting around and feeling sorry for yourself. But there does feel to be just a little bit of you that's kind of been sectioned off, that maybe is going through a bit of a grieving process. And that grieving process isn't just for what you've left behind, but it's for the version of you that you knew, that you knew how to steer and to operate, you knew the limits of your capacity and all that kind of thing. And now everything feels like it's blown wide open. That's Queen of Cups, Knight of Wands and Star. Well, we've got the Knight of Pentacles, we've got the Nine of Wands, we have got the Four of Cups, which is a card that is associated with Cancer anyway, but it's kind of followed you around for a little while. It's like the spectre of the old, the spectre of abandonment issues, the spectre of rejection issues, the spectre of feeling like you've rejected people and things and stuff, and that doesn't tend to sit very well within the Cancerian psyche, right? But you've got the Nine of Pentacles at the bottom of the deck as well, and it's all speaking to more or less the same thing here. It is perfectly understandable that you may be feeling a little bit out of sorts, but I don't feel like this is in any meaningful sense kind of pulling you away from the task in hand, whatever the task in hand may be. And it's this new situation for you, right? And it's almost like you're having to remind yourself periodically that this is what you wished for, this is what you wanted. And I think that can be really useful exercise, many times. And I'm a Leo, right? So the run up through Cancer season always feels a little bit like to me. No shade on Cancers, it's just that it's it's the run up to Leo season, and there's a lot of tying up before my solar return that seems to happen. And there've been many times where during Cancer season particularly, I felt a little bit hard done by, put upon, sometimes a little bit resentful about demands on my time and whatnot. And it's been really helpful for me to remind myself that, whatever it is that I'm doing, whatever pressure I'm under, whatever responsibilities and duties I've got, that I chose these. Right? This is why they're here. This is why they're mine. And if I wasn't doing this, I would be doing something else, and I may not be very happy with that. That kind of moment of checking in with yourself and reminding yourself periodically that everything that is going on here is in some way or another a combined effect of decisions that you have made, desires that you have acted on, so on and so forth, right? But just as this woman is doing in the Star, I do feel like a lot of Cancers are in quiet moments where nobody is looking, just kind of looking up and being like, no, this is what I chose, this is what I was about, this is what I'm doing, this is why this is happening. And with that Knight of Pentacles there, it's like the work, the commitment, the dedication, the effort that you are putting into settling yourself is actually part of what is offsetting the feeling that you might have made, snap decisions about what it is that you're going to do, or changes that you were going to make. The Son of Pentacles, this Knight of Pentacles card here, represents the sign of Virgo, and there's something quite telling in that, in so much as the South Node is currently in the sign of Virgo. And so we've got this very spiritual position whereby, just as you seem to be doing over here and you're doing here too, we're looking to balance out wisdom accrued, experiences had, with the things that no longer serve us, the things that can be let go, the things that can be released. And this is a careful process. And it's one of the reasons why when the South Node goes through your sign, it's hard work, right? Because you're kind of sifting through, and there's a lot to be released. There's a lot to be purged. Now, I think with this almost chop wood, carry water mentality that you have at the moment, it's kind of like, do the thing, do the thing, do the thing. It feels weird because I haven't got used to doing the thing yet, but the more I do the thing, the better I will be. I think to some extent, like, your advice to yourself is working here, but like I said, in that moment, it's kind of a little bit like checking in and saying, yeah, all right, this is what I chose. This is what I dreamt of. This is what I yearned for. Now I have it. Best not to reject it. Because is it everything that you thought it would be? I actually, Cancer, I think that it is. I think it's just what was left behind and the lack of familiarity and all those sorts of things that are, proving to be scratchy at the moment. Let's just call it scratchy. So we've got the Nine of Wands, and we also have the Nine of Pentacles at the bottom of the deck. And I think this is important too. It's the Nine of Pentacles down here is about the way that you manage your resources. And your resources are not simply the money in your bank or the money in your wallet, right? It's your time, your care, your energy, your effort, your love, your money. Yes, certainly those things are there. But it feels like until you get into the swing of what you're doing and what you're about, you're not really going to have a sense of what resources are available to you, because where you are right now is the result of a really huge push this year, a huge push. And you've probably got Jupiter to thank for assisting with that, right? But now we have the adjustment phase. You are very much in the adjustment phase. And I think it's really important that you remember to take time to regroup. I do wonder if some of you are maybe overdoing it a little bit, because you're finding that the chop wood, carry water is actually helping, right? So you don't have to think, or feel rather, too much about the changes that you've made. Like, to an extent that is correct, but you also need to remember to look after yourself. You also need to remember to maintain those good boundaries that you've developed over the years. You've also got to remember to find a way to coexist with your internal space, because that's all feeling a little bit jumbled up right now. There's an outer face that looks very different. It looks very competent, it looks very confident, it looks very secure. And I think you feel a little bit like you're in flux internally. Nine of Wands and Nine of Pentacles both speak about the way that you manage this, right? So how you manage your actions, and your actions ultimately need to take you in here when you're feeling okay to do so, but also the management of your resources and how you how you need to remember to keep a little bit back for you. That's what I'm trying to say, right? So when we come here to, what's this card? Where did this come from? Like, I legitimately do not remember that coming out at all. And without stopping the reading and rewinding, I'm not going to be able to see where that fell out. That's very interesting, Cancer. Because that was face down there, like, to the extent that I didn't even see it because I was focusing on these, right? Now, if we are to assume that this came out at the same time as these cards came out here, then what we have here is a little warning. And it's a little warning that I think is best counterbalanced by or paid attention to through the medium of temperance, right? So if the Nine of Pentacles is about how you manage your resources, and the Nine of Wands is about how you manage your actions and your experiences and your boundaries and all those kinds of things. Then the Nine of Swords is how you manage your mind. Now, I don't think it is particularly likely that any of you are going to fall into fits of depression. It seems unlikely with Jupiter in your sign. But equally, if Jupiter is going retrograde in your sign, it may feel like some of that benevolent pushing energy is suddenly gone. It's suddenly absent because Jupiter's gone to sleep for a little bit, and you're like, fuck, I need to do all of this on my own, right? And I think in those circumstances it is entirely possible that you could fall into a fit of depression if you are not careful with yourself. Now, like I said, it didn't come out with the main cards there. It was definitely an under the radar kind of thing. But maybe that's the beauty of the message at this time. The message is, pay attention to your mental health. This is how like, if your internal space is feeling all a little bit unfamiliar, a little bit unsecure, a little bit uncared for, then it is more important than ever that you find a way to make contact with that internal part of you, and introduce the temperance energy to it as much as you have been doing to everything else. But that extends as far as your mind as well. Now, if you have made some really big changes recently, Cancer, and you are now adjusting to the reality of those new circumstances that you're in, without the grounding element of what you are familiar with, it would be possible for you to lose perspective. And I don't think then, and I want to make this clear, what I'm not saying is it's guaranteed that you will lose perspective. I'm saying the possibility always remains that if you take your eye off your internal ball, whether it's mental or emotional, there is a possibility that this energy could kind of ambush you. So again, take care of yourself, make peace with yourself, allow yourself to be peaceful, and don't allow any dark bits inside of you an opportunity to grow, right? Tackle them head on. So, try that one again. When we come over to here, to November and what's in store for the rest of November, you will see now we have both the Empress and the Hangman. Now, this Empress represents Taurus energy. It also represents Libra energy, because actually the overarching energy across the top is Venus. The Hangman represents Pisces. The Empress, quite aside from her planetary associations, is the archetypal mother, right? She is then, therefore, associated with nurturing. She's associated with abundance and fertility. She's associated with creative projects that sometimes have not yet come to fruition, but are very, very close to being coming to fruition. For me, the Empress is and I think it's borne out beautifully by the illustration on this card, actually. For me, the Empress has a lot to do with gratitude. And there's something so very peaceful about the kind of gratitude she is exhibiting there. Sometimes from the Tower of the Abyss, we've got the Empress looking a bit like she's standing in a tempest, actually. Like her hair's blowing in the forest, and there's leaves whipping around everywhere, right? There's this kind of strong natural element to it. But here it's about finding the peace. And to some extent the Hanged Man is also about peace, because the energy of the Hanged Man is is a voluntary surrender to those things that are uncomfortable. Not so that we can just learn how to suffer in peace and quiet, but actually so that we can see the world from a different perspective. Now, it's interesting that there's a theme that is running through all the cards here that starts with feelings of pain that are, going through some sort of transmutation process before arriving here, and you seem to be actually surrendering to them. The voluntary surrender is incredibly important. Like that's, it's almost in that act that we have the presence of the illumination for which the Hanged Man is famed. You might say that the illumination comes from hanging upside down and seeing the world from a different perspective. Yeah, but it takes something very, very wise, someone very, very wise, to understand that that is an action that would yield a result that would improve long-term your circumstances, right? Or very wise to understand that submitting to the energy of the universe, surrendering to whatever is happening right now, is actually probably long-term going to serve you better than anything else. I mean, the Hanged Man speaks of a number of other things too, but in both instances here, what we have is something very, very peaceful, very, very simple emotions, gratitude and acceptance. Now, these are not easy. These are very high level attributes. But in the best tradition of these things, they are exceedingly simple, just very, very difficult to execute. The thing is, I don't think you're going to find it too difficult to execute these feelings, Cancer, particularly not if you take my advice and you kind of take your foot off the gas just a little bit. This is a good month for finding ways to connect with yourself in peace and quiet. Now, Jupiter may be in your sign, but we've got quite the pile-up going on in the other water signs too. We have a Mercury retrograde that's starting very soon. It's going to station in the sign of Sagittarius and then retrograde back into Scorpio, sister water sign to you. But additionally, there will be a point this month where we have both the Sun, the Moon, Mercury, Venus, Mars maybe. I don't know if Mars has already moved into Sagittarius by that point, right? And Lilith. So we've got a ton of energy over there in the Scorpio part of your chart. Jupiter occupying the Cancer part of your chart. And then over there at Pisces, we have both Neptune and Saturn, both in retrograde motion, hanging out in Pisces. And also the North Node is over there. I mean, like there's a water trine going on at the moment, which makes this month extremely potent for profound levels of emotional healing. Now, that would be important for everyone, but as a water sign yourself, that's even more important. And I just don't think that you need to do too much outside of yourself this month. In fact, I think you would be doing yourself a disservice if you did. So, the chop wood, carry water is very important, particularly in terms of discharging any obligations that you may have. But November is not a month for taking on any more than you already do. It's a month for settling, and it's a month for allowing healing to occur. It's a month for getting to know yourself again, because things have changed. And like I said, that internal space is not familiar anymore, not in the same way that it was. And I think that there's something quite profound about simple gratitude, simple acceptance, simple passivity. Saying, I am going to be in this space and just see what happens. Because this card here, although it is a Pentacles card, Six of Pentacles, and it does have meanings such as charity and all that kind of thing, what is it talking about fundamentally? It's talking about redressing a balance. Now, further, even though it's a Pentacles card, and even though it represents the sign of Taurus, we've got the Moon, your ruling planet, also spoken about in this card. The totality of the energies playing out then in this card is about grounded emotions that are balanced and allow you to draw on them as a resource, rather than them robbing energy from you, right? There's a balancing going on here this month. It's already been happening over here, but it's happening a little bit more over here. If you can give yourself the space, the peace, the quiet, and the willingness to be with yourself enough for it to happen. Definitely, practicing acts of gratitude and all that kind of thing. But look at this. We have the Hermit and we have the Emperor. And the Emperor feels to me like I don't want to use the word benefactor, right? Because that's got sort of Edwardian, Victorian shades of, some cadaverous old, relative that's living somewhere, and sending you money from thousands of miles away or whatnot, But there's something like that going on here, right? Now, the Emperor is a natural counterpart to the Empress. We know this, right? The Emperor and the Empress coming together obviously represent earthly parenthood. We would see them all kind of mystical, esoterical parenthood going on between the magician and the high priestess, right? But there's something very earthly and there's something very tangible about situations when these two come together. Now, here you are vibing in a effectively very feminine space this month, I would say. Not only do we have, an absolute abundance of water going on, which is a feminine element anyway, but we also have you in a state of I would say active, like practicing femininity by accepting, by expressing gratitude, by allowing shit to come to you and allowing yourself to process it, right? That's a distinctly feminine set of behaviours. When we add on to that as well, the fact that you are engaged in trying to balance yourself out, right, and balance your resources out and all that sort of stuff, trying to ground your emotions and trying to make yourself feel, get to know yourself, right? Let's put it like that, get to know yourself. This Emperor feels like a distinctly masculine energy coming in that is not disruptive but incredibly complementary to whatever situation that you've got going on here. Now, whilst the vast majority of my viewership is female, there is a subset that is male. And I want to make clear that when I'm talking about feminine energy to you chaps, like, you have feminine energy too. And what I'm not saying is you should expect a knock at the door from a tall, dark stranger or anything like that. I don't do those kind of readings, right? But there's something about you really embracing the feminine this month that seems to be bringing in an active, masculine energy, a very orderly energy that feels assistive to you. Like, I don't get a sense anywhere that you yourself are being the Emperor Cancer, because it's the antithesis of what the energy is talking about this month. We've got the Hermit here, Virgo energy, looking at the star. I want to kind of refer you back to the fact that we had the star up here, right? And you've been kind of checking in with that star. It feels a lot like you're taking the star and bringing it down into you. It's like feeling your way through the star, feeling your way through the fact that this is what you wanted and this is what you chose for yourself, right? All of these energies together of kind of like settling your heartbeat and breathing in deeply and taking everything very slowly and being very watery, not kind of trying to force any kind of order on yourself at all, but like giving yourself the space to do that. And this Emperor feels like he's coming in sort of stage left, deeply impressed by what he sees. So whether you are a man or whether you are a woman or whether you are something else altogether, I'm talking about a masculine energy that is highly beneficial to you, but also highly complementary to your feminine energy, whether or not you are a man or a woman, doesn't matter at this point, right? We're talking about energies. This masculine energy is coming in and going, can I help you? May not be saying those words exactly, but that's how the energy is presenting. This is a extraordinarily magnetic Cancer. The Emperor. It may well even be a fire sign, actually. Look at this, we've got double Leo. You've got Saturn in Leo with the 5 of... Oh no, it's not double Leo at all, beg your pardon. That's actually Aquarius there. It's a 5 of Swords, not the 5 of Wands. We've got the 5 of Swords, which is Aquarius, and we've got the King of Wands, which is Leo. But this feels like problem solving. Right, so being as the Emperor is... and he is the King of Kings, right? He's given to represent the sign of Aries. So we have Aries, we have Leo, we have Sagittarius, right? Those 3 signs, one of those 3 signs probably going to be quite important to you this month. But this 5 of Swords is kind of like wonky thinking. It's unstable thinking. It is a problem. And I feel like whatever this masculine energy is, and there's the other thing, right? It doesn't have to be in a man. It can be in a woman. It'd just be a very efficient, very fiery kind of, this is what we do to do things. Coming in and kind of complementing your feminine energy this month and getting ready to take you on a journey of some description that is then beginning to make it clear to you that you really are on the first step of a journey and not the last. I think this is a really important thing that you're working out here, because we do have the world at the bottom of the deck, right? This usually represents the 4 fixed signs. So we've got Aquarius, Scorpio, Taurus and Leo being depicted by these. But there is a Saturn quality to this where it says, yeah, we've kind of worked through that cycle. We are on a new cycle though now. Because you never get stuck between cycles. You're either in one or you're in the next one. Because you don't get to progress to the next one until you've conquered the one that you're in. I mean, this world card to me says that this energy, this really leaning into your feminine energy this month, in your quiet time, in your downtime, and allowing yourself to feel around it, is the end of the cycle. It is the thing that brings in the next phase of the adventure. You know, it's like this has all been the beginning of the end, and now we're about to start reaching into the beginning of the beginning. This is really interesting. I'm going to go over now to the extended, and I'm going to dig into this a little bit more deeply. So if you'd like to join me over there, you're very welcome to do so. You can do that on Selfie. You can do that on Circle. If that's not your bag, that's absolutely fine. I mean, as you can see, it is a big month for you. There's no other way of looking at it. But your best remedy for anything that may come up this month is to simply lean into that acceptance, lean into that gratitude, lean into your internal complexity, and just let it wash over you. It's not a lot that you have to do here. And there's a fire energy that's on its way in that is going to help. That's very strong, right? It's going to help. It's going to create a bit of order. It's going to create a little bit of a plan. And you just have to be in the right space to allow it to come towards you. That's what this is all about. Well, okay, right. So know that I love you all very, very much. And I'll see you soon.